You're listening to Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Two fans, two generations, all things Star Wars begins now.
All right. Well, hello, everybody. I'm Eric Vansel.
And I'm Daryl Sanders.
And, of course, we're your hosts for this show. And so, of course, I would be remiss if I didn't bring up the fact that it is September 11th, the 22nd anniversary of the tragedy. I saw a bunch of posts going, today and everything. But, being that we're talking about, like, Star Wars and all that, it kind of ties in a little bit. But it is cool how, New York is actually rebuilt and, crazy.
It's thriving. Yeah, it's bounced back and recovered from that, horrendous tragedy that happened, 22 years ago. And, most of us can remember where we were and what we were doing when that unfortunate, tragic event happened. But to focus on the positives of that, we've come back stronger as a country. We still have work to do, but we're still growing together. And one of the ways that we grow together is talking about Star Wars on
Star Wars,
on a Monday night.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a small communities that grow into a big neighborhood.
Yeah, so. It is. Well, you know what? And our community is growing. I mean, I want to thank all the new subscribers that we've gotten recently too, and the fact that people, they've been subscribing and they've been jumping right in on chatting, talking with us on the Discord. I mean, it's been really cool. Of course, somebody has been with us for a while. Peter Griffin says, "Going full spoilers tonight?" Just kidding. I wouldn't do that to you. Yeah, and then, of course, David's with us. He said, Star Wars Day. It's one of them. Monday and Friday, we're really going to try to, of course, maintain our live schedule as much as we possibly can. And, of course, to that end, before we get into all this stuff, don't forget that this Friday, we're still doing, what did we do last week? Like 11? It was something insane.
11.
Is that when we went on? Like time
Oh,
wise.
you talking about the time?
Yeah.
The time. Okay. I thought you were talking about the topic.
No. I know. You're like, hey man, little prep here.
I was like, what?
It was something like, it was either 10 or 11.
Like 11 o'clock.
Was it 11? Yeah, that's right. We were shooting for 10 and it became 11. So it's going to be, again, our Friday show is going to be like that. We're going to shoot for 10, but it'll probably be 11. I mean, and of course, just keep your eye out. I'll, of course, update everybody in the community tab.
And that's why if you subscribe, you automatically will find out when we're actually
That's right.
So
if you hit that notification bell, you will know when we go live. Also want to talk to our Twitch followers. We always have people watching us on Twitch. That's fantastic. And then, of course, David on the 9/11 message says, God bless America, the greatest country on the planet. Well, let's not forget our other friends, though, like Ronaldo. People who are joining us from other countries, it's kind of like, but yeah.
I believe Ronaldo probably feels that his country is the greatest too. So,
everyone's
great.
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
Everyone should have a high opinion of themselves.
Yes, everybody should definitely have a high opinion of themselves. But, segueing into our topic tonight, though, this is actually sort of interesting because you ran across this. I mean, it was kind of weird because you ran across this thing, and I've been investigating it a little bit further. And it's dealing with the Acolyte that's coming up. A lot of times, because people have been so focused on Ahsoka and everything else, the Acolyte is sort of, I guess, been pushed on the back burner a little bit. And it's interesting because there is movement. I mean, first of all, everybody forgets that there was that little trailer that was shown at Star Wars Celebration. And to that end, one of the things that's been talking about, and that's what we're going to center our discussion around tonight. Now, of course, who knows what we get into here when we all start to get going, but the center is there's actually not going to be a whole lot of, like, war. There's not going to be a lot of blasters. There's not going to be a lot of any of that stuff. It's actually going to very much be lightsaber focused. So if you guys are the type of fans that are a little bit more into the whole Jedi Sith thing, you're going to be very well rewarded with this show if the reports are to be believed. And then also, and that's what this article actually talks about, is that these lightsaber duels apparently are going to even eclipse those of the prequel trilogy. Specifically, the Darth Maul, Qui-Gon Jinn, Obi-Wan duel, and of course the Anakin Obi-Wan duel in Episode 3. So, I don't know, that's a pretty bold claim, but what you were the one that actually brought this up for you and I to talk about, so I want to give you your full, introductory
you
thing,
took all
if
my
you will.
thunder. No,
Well,
no, I'm just joking.
well, I mean,
Well,
what
the
can I
Acolyte
tell
is
you?
coming. It's a new show that's coming up, and that's it. No,
Exactly. All right, thank you, everybody.
God bless. Good night.
Dragonfly Mass joins us. He says, yo, good evening. Good evening to you too.
Hey, man.
Hey, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe button, by the way. Might as well just get that out of the way now before we get into all this stuff. All right, you have the floor now, I promise.
So here's the thing. The Acolyte is set in towards the end of the High Republic era. As you aforementioned, that there aren't a whole lot of blasters. They really want to keep this more samurai Asian martial arts based. So there's going to be a lot of lightsaber combat and a lot of hand-to-hand combat. So that's actually going to be something really cool that I know a lot of fans have been really wanting to see. Some have felt that outside of the prequels, we haven't really gotten any really super cool lightsaber duels, which I would agree. I mean, in the sequel trilogy, we really didn't get that great of.
Yeah,
you think
the
you would
sequel
improve
trilogy was sort of
but
lacking a little bit. I mean, there was some cool stuff. Like, I thought some of the Kylo Ray stuff was cool in Rise of Skywalker, but I mean, so it's like this. It fit the storyline, I think, but yeah, I do remember all through the sequel trilogy, thinking to myself, I was a little underwhelmed,
Yeah, definitely. And then the particular medium, they're actually going to have hand-to-hand combat, which is something you don't usually see a whole lot in Star Wars. It's usually either a blaster or a lightsaber.
Hey,
But to actually see
Han
them do
Solo
hand-to-hand,
he knocked out the stormtrooper in Return of the
yeah,
Jedi, which of course further proves, by the way, that's something that always bothers me. It's like these guys
those
have
helmets,
armor. Well, they're
right?
like fully armored, right? And yet
Exactly.
this dude just like kind of like chops them in the back and knocks them out. Really?
Yeah, I know it's kind of goofy. Yeah, I mean, you have stuff like that. Even when Leia hit that one trooper with that big tree branch when she knocked him out in Return of the Jedi, it was kind of like,
Exactly.
that just seemed kind of, but whatever.
It's almost like the armor doesn't really protect against a bunch of. It's like, why even wear it at this point? You know what I mean? It's
I
kind of
think
like,
it's probably one of those. It looks more threatening than
well, it
than
looks cool.
effective.
Yeah,
it looks cool. It looks imposing when everybody you can never see their faces pretty much. I mean, they're very ominous, So, and it kind of reminds me of not to make this all racial, but it kind of reminds me of the Klan in a way, in the sense of they covered
Yeah,
their faces because they don't want you to know
yeah.
who's really in the, who's really a part of it. So it's
Well,
like that could be
you
your
are always
dentist
talking
under
about.
their,
You're talking about the snow
you know.
troopers. The snow troopers totally.
Oh, those
That's
man,
like
they
a
totally
that's
look
like a Klan thing, right? That was nobody can tell me that wasn't mildly influenced, especially since
yeah,
it's white.
definitely.
I guess with
Yeah,
the Sith
exactly.
trooper, we get the snow Sith trooper that'd be like the Grand Wizard.
Right, and they are higher up. So if
They are higher up, exactly.
if you want to take it to that degree, but
no, that's a good point though. You do bring up a good point where it's like it's really more to just create a uniformity and then as well as just like a threat, right? Because I mean, if you could see faces, if you could see eyes and things like that, you could start to relate a little bit more as human, whereas the stormtroopers are just like these faceless soldiers or whatever, and I think it does carry that threat. I do find it funny though that it just seems like
the armor does absolutely nothing for them.
nothing.
Right. Yeah,
I mean, it doesn't stop laser blasts. People can like hit you in it, and it's I don't know. Let me get to a couple of these chats though before we go on, because that's what we like to do here. I don't like to get too far behind. So Bruce Lee is actually directly answering David's thing, which is just absolutely hilarious. I got to put this up. He says, "Isn't it 37th in education, David?" Look, it's true. We're a little bit lower in the education thing. We know that. But we build really big bombs. All right. And then Dragonfly Mass says, "Are you implying some, what is this, Terras Kasi masters?"
Yeah, I mean they're more into the samurai thing. This is kind of like really into the samurai aspect. So if you want to talk about like the whole Bushido, honor type thing, it's kind of in that realm, if you will. Whereas Sith would probably be more on the ninjutsu side of things,
Yeah.
more secretive, covert, that type of style. So you would have, and that's what's going to make this interesting. And the fact that they're not only are they really supposed to be amping up the stunts, amping up the action. I know that's something David he often talks about, and we often have debates about, and I love to hear his opinion on this because he feels like Star Wars is like, okay, one of the pillars of Star Wars, if you will, is the action, and it's kind of an action-y type, enterprise or franchise, I should say. And, people come a lot for the action. And when you have lightsabers and things like that, like people are coming to see that type of action in a film or a series. And so this hopefully pays off to the fans who really are coming for that type of action. But the other thing that's really good about the Acolyte that they've also mentioned is that they're really super trying to limit CGI, green screen, the volume, all of that stuff. This project actually is over budget. I think pre-production alone was $50 million, and that's just pre-production.
That's
crazy.
And
this is for a series. This is for a series, not a movie, a series. So the fact that they spent $50 million in, and that's because you got to have location. They had to build sets. They had to do all that stuff. Leslie Headland is a playwright, so she's used to dealing with, sets and wants things built and to fill the space with a lived-in world. So that's really her thing. We've had some of the writers or stunt directors from the movie Logan have also lended a hand in this particular series. So it should be interesting. But my focus tonight, I really wanted to put towards you, Eric, and everybody who's watching or who will watch, and is what are you looking for as far as action wise, as far as what makes Star Wars for you? Like, what is it that you're looking for as fans? Because we've talked about it, we've had a whole series about what is Star Wars and all that. But as a fan, like David often says, he comes for, good stories, and he wants to see like compelling action. So from you all, what do you want to see? What do you guys think is the best lightsaber duel you've seen thus far?
All right, well, I'll start because unlike the audience, I actually have a microphone and I'm already up here. So, but I think
you have home field advantage.
Yeah, I do have home field advantage. I mean, it just, I started the stream and but I think a lot of it, so I think most people could agree, look, we all want a good story. I don't necessarily think that anybody is going to be like, well, we don't really need a story. I just want to see there could be some of those out there. Because obviously, you look at some films, they're just like mindless action movies, But even, because a lot of times people blame the video game culture for this, but even in video games, one of the biggest complaints is a story, right? People want story in their games, even. So I think that's something that we can all establish as a baseline. Like everybody watching this live right now and who are chatting in, But even if you are watching this in the future, I think that, and you can hit us up in the comments below and let us know. I mean, is story, I mean, I just think that that's the baseline by which we all have to start this conversation, right? I mean, a lot of times we say things like that, but I think that that's a given. Beyond that, though, you're right. There are people that maybe lean more towards the political stuff in Star Wars. And then there's some people that lean more towards, you have that infamous debate, right? The war or the lore. And it's like people want to focus more on the military part of it, the rebels versus the Empire, Rogue Squadron, X-Wing versus TIE, that kind of thing. I mean, more of the, I guess, the military aspects of this whole thing. Then, of course, there is the lore part, which is now you're going into your Jedi versus Sith type of a deal, a little bit more of the fantasy, mystical aspects of this. So there's that element of it, too. And then, of course, you have people who are sitting in the middle, who maybe don't go one way too heavily or another. It's just kind of like, well, I like a balance. I don't like it to be too one-sided, right? So some people might find Andor a little bit too much for them simply because it just doesn't have enough Jedi Sith in it. Some people might actually find the Acolyte a little bit too heavy on the mystical part, and there's no, I'd like to see somebody fire a gun every once in a while, maybe, that kind of thing. So I think that you have that. Now, me personally, I've always been about more of the balance, but I will say this, and this is where I differ from a lot of fans, I think. And that is, you get a lot of fans who are really into, like I said, one aspect or the other, right? And then I kind of like a balance of the two. But here's the thing. I think a lot of this stuff has focused, and, people might not necessarily agree, because with the Skywalker saga, certainly you've had a focus on the Jedi and the Sith. But here's the problem. It's been very narrow. It's been as it relates to the Skywalkers in a lot of ways. I mean, sure, the prequel trilogy did give us a little bit more of an open world view on it. But even then, you can say, well, it's mostly been the Jedi. It's been through the lens of the Jedi. This show promises to be a little bit more of the lens to the Sith. And I really like that fact, because we haven't, outside of the novels and some of the comics, we haven't really focused too much on, say, how Palpatine trained Vader. Or, how did the Sith approach training their acolytes versus the Jedi training their Padawans.
Right.
We talked about how this thing takes place toward the end of the High Republic. Well, we haven't really seen much of the High Republic outside of novels and comics. It hasn't really made its way yet into animation or live action. And I think that it definitely really needs to, if it's going to catch on. There's various reports, too. There's some who are touting the success of the High Republic. There are others who are actually saying that it's either failing or hanging on by a thread, that Star Wars fans just aren't buying into it. Now, if that's true, it's only because it hasn't really penetrated the consciousness of the casual fan, which that's what drives your billion-dollar films. I mean, Star Wars isn't making billions of dollars just because all the hardcores love it. I mean, there are a lot of hardcore fans, but there's many more casual fans, and you capture those. And again, I'm not saying to, aim any kind of Star Wars stuff strictly to the casual fans. In fact, in my opinion, I think that they've done that a little bit too much. I actually like where a lot of this stuff is going, because now it seems they are catering a little bit more to the, you can call it hardcore fan, or you can call it more passionate fan, however you want to address it. But yeah, I would like to see a little bit more, not just the whole focus on the Sith training, but, give us a little bit more of the context with it being the tail end of the High Republic. That's what I really think that this needs to do successfully in order for it to catch on. Because this is one of the complaints you've always had about Visions. You'll go, well, the animation was great and, the story's okay, but I have no idea what's going on. It's like I've got no clue as to what's happening right now. And the reason for that.
Yeah.
And then, of course, in season 2, there were a lot of things where, hey, I really actually enjoyed this. And we talked about it. Well, when you enjoyed it, it was because you understood the context in which the story was taking place. And I think that that's something that really needs to happen here. All right, before we move on to some of this other stuff, let me get some of these chats in here. David says, y'all think that these new shows and movies post-Lucas are missing the this is cool factor. Lucas made Star Wars cool, but like Ahsoka, it's not cool, it's not fun. I mean, I would say what it's missing is Lucas's storytelling heart. That's what I think is missing. They have the look of stuff it looks like Star Wars. But it doesn't. It's missing that Lucas touch.
Yeah. Yeah, I would agree. I think a lot of things. I mean, there are some aspects like I think The Mandalorian definitely had the Lucas touch in it, and you would think that with a show like Ahsoka, because it's a Dave Filoni's character, and it's something that he kind of created with George when they did the Clone Wars animation. So I'm kind of confused as to why the transition to live action is so difficult. And I could see if this was his first foray into live action, but he's done The Mandalorian.
Well, he's directed The Mandalorian. He's co-written it with Favreau. See, this is the first time where he's doing it more by himself. His inexperience with live action is really showing with Ahsoka. This is where Lucas... I mean, we all know that Lucas is not very good at directing actors and stuff like this, but he does know how to translate things into live action. He also knows how to translate things in animation. The reason he knows how to do this is because, well, he got his background, of course, in live action. I mean, he went to school for it, filmmaking. He did American Graffiti before he did Star Wars. I mean, it's not like... Then, of course, he went on, he did Indiana Jones with Steven Spielberg, so he has the storytelling part of it really down. And I think the problem is, because you look at Ahsoka, I mean, she's just like completely wooden. I don't understand why. Because even if they made Ahsoka to where, okay, this almost plays out like a live action cartoon, I understand what you're saying, because it's kind of like, well, why don't we get the emotion that we got from the animated characters then? And that's because I think blocking,
So do you think it's basically more on the direction or the acting? Because, for example, I love Rosario Dawson. Love her. I think she's a phenomenal actress. So we know that she knows how to act because we've seen her in other films.
Yep.
So now Ashley Eckstein is the one who actually voiced Ahsoka on the Clone Wars Rebels. So she's the one who's really intimate with that character. Now I know Rosario consulted Ashley and they sat down and talked and had conversations about the character. Do you think it would have served better? And this is going to kind of go, and granted, I'm not trying to make this another Ahsoka review, but
well, but it actually does. Well, here's the thing. First of all, anything that the audience brings up is fair game. Like I said, I mean, what we're talking about is, that's where we've centered the discussion, but that's not necessarily where it goes. However, it does have a tie-in with this, because the problem is that The Mandalorian, even season 3 of The Mandalorian, is way inferior to seasons 1 and 2. I mean, the Book of Boba Fett, Obi-Wan, now Ahsoka, they're not living up to what The Mandalorian promised us. They're inferior. And of course, the Acolyte, I mean, we hope it doesn't suffer the same fate, but it's just not looking good right now.
Yeah, and that's what I mean. Like, so we still have yet to see Thrawn. So we're all estimating or guesstimating. I say we should see him tomorrow at 9 o'clock.
Yeah.
That we're going to actually see Thrawn. So, but he's actually voiced by this. He's actually played by the person who voices him on the show
Hmm.
Rebels. So we know that character, that person, that actor is intimately familiar with how to at least be or have the mind of Thrawn. If you get what I'm saying. So with Ashley Eckstein, do you think she would have made a better Ahsoka because she actually understands she's been playing Ahsoka for so long, both young and old? Or is it a directing problem and that's why Rosario is not delivering Ahsoka the way that we need her delivered?
I mean, I think, you can make the argument that there's a combination going on here, but I really think it's more of a directing problem. I think even if Ashley were in the role, there would be a same. She might be able to bring a little bit more and be more Ahsoka, but there's more than just. 'Cause you have to understand when these people in animation are emoting and doing all that, they're doing what we're doing now. They're behind a microphone. They're
Yeah,
getting the
but there,
voice
but
performances. You're not dealing with
yeah,
things like blocking and staging and, you know,
true.
movements and things like that. I mean, one of the things that, like, for instance, when Star Trek, the Next Generation cast started to do films, right? Because keep in mind, they were doing like 7 seasons or something of television. And then they were finally
Hmm.
going into the
Yeah,
movies.
film. Hmm.
Well, I forgot who directed Generations, but one of the big problems that he had was he had to get them to, emote more and use the space more because they were so used to being in this 4x3 television tight space that they acted that way. And so he had a really hard time going, guys, you've got this whole like wide space now. There's just more of the scene that you're seeing, and you have to act that way. But see, it took a director who had experience enough to be able to see the issue, to be able
David
to
Carson, by the
identify.
way.
Okay. Yeah. It was somebody that I was familiar with, but I couldn't remember offhand. And that's the thing. It's like you have to get somebody who actually understands that. The problem is that Filoni, he's not there yet. I think
Hmm.
he'll get there, but he's not there. And I think that a lot of the problems, because Favreau has stepped off a little bit. And remember, Favreau actually is the one with movie making experience. That's why I think that
Hmm.
seasons 1 and 2 of The Mandalorian were so good. He had more of a stamp on that. It's well known that he took a little bit of a back seat, gave it more to Filoni for season 3. Filoni had a lot to do with some of these other ones. Now, of course, yeah, they're bringing in other directors and stuff like that too. Some of them who have
Hmm.
very much had film experience, but I
Sure.
think overall too, you got to factor in the writing. I mean, even writing for live action is different from writing for animation. And I think that in a
Hmm.
lot of ways we're seeing that now. If I'm not mistaken, Leslie Headland, she has also had experience with film
Well, and by her being a playwright as well, she's really good with blocking because that's
and
what you do
blocking
on
and staging.
stage.
Yes, exactly. And
Yeah.
so because of that, I have a feeling that we're not going to have the same issues because it's really more her thing than Filoni's thing. But,
Hmm.
you never know, right? I mean, one hopes. I mean, we just keep hoping that something, and again, I can't stress this enough, before David has a chance to start talking about how we owe him a bunch of coffees all of a sudden. We like the show, right? It's not a bad show. It just has some issues. All right, so
Mm.
uh, Peter Griffin says, I would rather watch paint dry than watch Andor again. Holy smokes. Then he says, just kidding to my Andor adorers. He goes on to say, I'm looking forward to the Acolytes ending and what follows after. That's another good point that not a whole lot of people are talking about. Because, first of all, we don't really know how long the Acolyte's going to go, right? I mean, we don't. Have they ever talked
Hmm.
about like how many seasons? Most people don't
Or even
really.
there, I don't even know how many episodes the show's
Yeah,
gonna be. To be
exactly.
honest with you,
We don't even know how many episodes are in the first season, right?
yeah,
I mean, you
right.
you know, you want to say okay, it's probably 8 to 10, but we don't know. And you also have to factor in like, okay, is it going to be a situation where they're going to end it and it's going to end on a cliffhanger, or excuse me, is it going to end, very definitively? When is it going to end? Like, not only how many episodes are there, but how much time in universe is transpiring between episode 1 and the season finale? We don't know. So that's actually a very strong point. We really don't know a lot yet. And that's even, by the way, with Ahsoka, why even though we're talking about all the problems and stuff, there's still
Hmm.
about 10% of me that is holding back full criticism until we get like really deep. Because right now we're about halfway through, but when we're like 3/4, maybe 80%, so like by episode 8 or something like that, then I might go, okay, now I think we can really get a sense. I mean, granted, there have been entire seasons that have been turned around by the last few episodes, but generally speaking, you could start to see the season wide issues of a show once you're well into that season. But until then, when you're doing episode by episode, or in our case, we've been doing 2 episodes at a time, well, until this week. I mean, I think we're going to just be able to. And it sounds like, I mean, because they're doing a whole theatrical release and all that, it's probably a good thing, too, because I have a feeling that episode 5 is going to.
Need a show on
Yeah, it's
all
going to
on its
need
own.
its own show, exactly. All right, Dragonfly Mass says, I like Palpatine versus Mace, Kit, Tin, and Aegon. Fight might have been short, but that fight showed us the power of a top-tier Sith. Big props to Kit for
True.
recovering from that Force scream so fast. Yeah, that's actually something that I never really thought about, but it is so true. That battle, we always focus on the Mace versus Palpatine battle, which is when it really
Hmm.
gets into it. But if you just take just all those Jedi Masters versus Palpatine at first, like you said, it was really short, but it is cool and it was very exciting. And
Hmm.
you really didn't know, what was really going to happen. That's the kind of
That was
thing
the
I would love
first.
to see.
That was the first time we ever saw the Emperor truly in action too.
That's true too, yeah.
So it's like, the fact that, I mean, up until then, we even know he had a lightsaber at that point. So one, from the moment when he stands up and that one just shoots out from like his wrist, like he has some Batman gauntlet on, and
I
then
know.
it shoots out from under his robe, and then he just jumps in the air and does this whole little spinning tornado thing, and now he's up on everybody and he's wiping out masters. And reading the book of Revenge of the Sith was really cool, because like reading the actual description of what was happening
Oh yeah.
versus we actually saw was just like, man, I really want to see that on screen.
Well, not to mention the
So
whole epic opening of that, right? I mean, that whole like when Anakin and Obi-Wan were going to save the Emperor, that thing went on like
mhm,
for like chapters. I
yeah.
mean, we got to really, because that was the one time I think that I had read the book before seeing the movie. And I
Yeah.
have to say, it took me a minute because I was disappointed, in a lot of scenes, because there was a lot of things I was really looking forward to seeing. And then, of course, you're like, well, that sucked. It was like 10 minutes. And
Right.
that was one of them. Because you're right. I mean, the way that duel played out in the novel, I mean,
Yeah.
granted, I get it. I mean, before people start flooding the comments with, well, the book's always going to be better. Yeah, I know. But the thing is that I wish that they could have maybe elongated it a little bit. Um, David said, it looks like Star Wars. Thank you, Mr. Vanson, for the statement of the year. Well, it's something that I never really had thought about until today, that is really one of the problems that Disney Star Wars, particularly with the Disney Plus shows, is actually suffering, is that it looks like Star Wars, but it doesn't totally feel like Star Wars. Um, Uh-oh. Chad's at it again, but let me get to these two Peter ones. Peter says, I know how it ends and what follows. He says, well, 99%. Yeah? You're just going to leave it like that? No follow-up statement? No corroboration? No, I'm a Lucasfilm employee and I just watch your show or something? I mean...
Yeah, he's Super Shadow now.
Yeah? Well, yeah. That's mean. That's not even... All right, Chad says, this is for Daryl. How about them Lions? And go blue.
That's right.
Yeah. 1 point. Let's see. Which one of the players was like... It was some key player that didn't end up playing the game. That I'm sure...
Kelsey.
If he had been in the game, it might have gone a little bit differently. I mean, I'm just saying...
Hey, you got to play who shows up, man. I want to hear it.
It's true, but here's my problem. And again, not to get off... Because it's funny, the music show that I listen to every day on Sirius XM, they get off on all the sports stuff, and then they have to bring it back to music. So it's a very similar thing. But I could tie this in. Because much like in a lot of these shows, everybody gets really excited on the first 2 episodes of a season, but it's like, you got another 10 episodes. You know, the Lions, I'll give it to them. They pulled it out, and it was good. However, you know, there were a lot of things that really did hinder the Chiefs that had that not happened, it might have been a very different outcome. And I'll start to get excited about the Lions' performance maybe 5 games in.
I'll have to say that for most of that argument, that's what Lions have been saying our whole careers. Like, their whole careers is like, oh, well, yeah, if we had this, we probably would have been better. If we had this, we would have been. So now that the shoe's on the other foot, yeah, whatever.
Hey, I hope I'm wrong. I hope I'm celebrating a Super Bowl thing right now. I mean, I really do.
We hope
it
so.
Says...
Mike Tirico.
All right, so who is that? I'm not really a sports guy.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
He's a sports commentator.
Hey, you know what? Facts are facts. Doesn't matter who's saying them, Chad. Just saying. Peter says, I didn't think you wanted spoilers. It ends with Darth Plagueis in the shadows and follows with his origin stories. Now, I'm pretty sure that he's talking about the Acolyte.
Yeah, he's talking about the Acolyte, but that would be cool.
Well, yeah, that would be really cool, actually.
And that makes sense because then that's when Palpatine probably starts to become Palpatine, and then because right at the end because the end of the High Republic is like 200 years before the events of the Phantom Menace, if I'm not mistaken. So somewhere,
well, actually,
in the midst of
about 100 years, really. This takes place a couple 100 years before the Phantom Menace, but I think the true end of the High Republic isn't that far removed. I forgot. It was like what was it, like 1,000 years before to maybe like 100 or 200 years before or something. I think that was like the High Republic era or something. So yeah,
somewhere around there.
And we had talked about that. And by the way, we're a spoiler. I mean, a lot of times with a lot of these shows, I always have to put, it's a spoiler discussion. We weren't a spoiler community here. I always have to yell at all these other pages that, like I remember I'm part of the group with the Meg movies. It's really the Meg books, but because the movies are coming out, they're talking about them. And you always get these guys, and you get this with anything. You get this in the Cobra Kai groups, too. They're notorious for this, right? Series will drop, and especially Cobra Kai, because it's like, the entire thing drops that day, right? And you'll get these guys that are like, oh, well, you guys are talking about spoilers and all this. And I'm like, okay, dude, if you know you're not going to have a chance to watch it for like maybe that weekend or something, just mute the group. You don't have to check the group. What are we supposed to do? Talk about some compelling thing that happened in season 2? What do you think everybody's going to talk about? People, when a new season or a new film or something like that drops, you want to talk about it. And you're not going to get all non-spoilery about it. What we usually will try to do, like if something That's one of the things that's cool about the fact that these things are dropping, like the Ahsoka show's dropping on Tuesday and we do it Friday, is it does give people a little bit of time. Like, we actually were doing these reviews purposely on Mondays because they would drop on like Friday or whatever. And it's kind of like, all right, well, but again, even if we were to do a spoiler review that day, you don't have to watch us that day. You know? Just wait. I mean, you can't, what, are we supposed to wait till everybody has a chance to see something? I mean, you know, that always really drove me insane every time I would see people arguing about that. But okay, that was my rant for this show.
The views and comments expressed.
Yeah, exactly. Got to start putting little warnings, you know, and just be like, listen, I'm not, you know, I notice you're like backing away a little bit. All of a sudden your screen goes black or whatever. It's like, hey, if you guys want to join me, I'll be streaming on this site.
Here's the we're on the back patio.
Yeah, exactly. We'll do the after show. But no, I mean, the Plagueis thing would make a lot of sense, and we had talked about that. We actually said, will Plagueis make an appearance in this show? And honestly, he should. All right, Dragonfly Mask says, I'd be disappointed if a Darth Plagueis mention or cameo didn't happen in Acolyte. And absolutely, I mean, you have to figure, if this only is taking place like 100 or 200 years before the Phantom Menace, I mean, it has to, right? I mean, he's got to be around. One of our,
depending on his species.
Yeah, well, sure, but I mean, well, even so, I mean, Palpatine is like, in the Phantom Menace, I think he's supposed to be in his 50s, right? If you figure that he was training, say, in his 20s, and that maybe even his teens, I don't remember, because I don't think they canonized his training yet, because they didn't canonize those books yet with Plagueis training Palpatine. But let's just say, for the sake of argument, they did, okay? He ended up training in his 20s. That's still like 30 years. So that's only like, you know, 70 years before the Phantom Menace or something. I mean, it's just like, it's just really bumping up. Now, if it's 200 years before the Phantom Menace, then yeah, you could say there's some room, but you know he's around. One of our Twitch viewers, Bruce, you think Disney Lucas will release the numbers at the end of selected theaters tomorrow? I wonder if they will be all sold out or embarrassed they aren't. You know, that's a really strong point.
Good. Yeah, that's a very valid question.
Very valid question. Wow, you know, I mean, I don't know.
Probably, I honestly don't think that it's going to sell out.
Oh, it's not going to sell out. No,
it's not going to sell out. I mean, unless you have like a really small theater, like it holds maybe 50 people or something stupid like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, but here's the other thing you got to look at too with that, right? I mean, how many screens are they actually releasing this? Because I checked, there's nothing around us. You know, I wanted to go check it out. I mean, I'd be willing to do it. I mean, to see the whole Ahsoka thing in the theaters, that would be kind of cool. You know, and then we could even do the thing that a lot of YouTubers are doing now too, like that, you know, out of theater reaction, and we're just like, you know, standing there on my phone, like streaming to YouTube or something. But, and I mean, I'll take a second look because maybe they've added some stuff. I mean, it would really be cool to do, but you know, I don't know. And so I would say, if it's a very limited run, I don't know if they're going to necessarily announce that, because even if it is really cool, they'd have to quantify that, right? They'd have to tell you, like, okay, well, the only reason why it seems low is because it was only released to like 100 screens across the country, or, you know, and I don't necessarily know if they're going to want to do all that. We got something from our friend Ted Adam Green here. There we go. I hate sometimes this thing like takes forever to get this stuff. He says, hey guys, came in late and we'll watch all of it tomorrow before episode 5. And wish it was in the theaters in Atlanta tomorrow, but it's not. Dang it. Yeah, I know. I mean, and it's funny because it's a lot of big markets too that are not, you know, that you're kind of like, okay. Well, I mean, my thing is like, you got to do an all or
you got to go to Utah.
Yeah, are you actually
But
punching up where it is?
no, actually,
Well, punch up where it is. Maybe, how much of a drive would it be?
to Utah.
Not to Utah.
Well, that's what I was just joking about. You're like, well, punch it up. I'm like,
No, I'm
no.
talking about like the whole, theatrical run. I got an early call on Wednesday, man. I can't be like out that late driving to Utah. Hey guys, flight's like delayed. You do that. I'm going to read this thing from David. He says Star Wars needs more stakes, grit, and masculinity. This is something Andor got right. Ooh, I'm going to frame that comment. The rebellion moments had you beating your chest in your house as you watched it. Acolyte needs fights like that. I think they are going to have stuff like that. I mean, honestly, I think that the Acolyte seems to be setting itself up for that kind of thing.
Well, here's the thing, and that's what I was actually punching up.
It's going to be female-led,
So,
though.
well, female villain. So even the way the songs have been coordinated, they come from an Asian background. All the fight training we have done, we've gone through is heavily influenced by samurai and martial arts. There is a lack of guns, which personally, as someone who loves fighting and stunts and stuff, I love because it gives you that body to body choreography, that dance feeling. It actually looks like a real fight as opposed to just point and shoot, which is kind of an easy cop out in a way.
Mm-hmm.
We have a lot of sabers. Chris Cohen and Mark Ginther and Darren Knopp have choreographed all these wonderful stunts in such a beautiful way. It's visually stunning. We watched some of the stuff the other day, and it was just gorgeous. And I think then we have a bunch of fights where there are no sabers, so it's really fun and it does look really gritty and real. It feels like a fight.
Well, there you go. They even use the word gritty, and
Yep.
David mentioned grit.
Yep. He might be a Lions fan after all. Maybe I'm just biased with our show. You can enjoy it with your whole family and understand it and be very entertained. There's a high entertainment value.
Wait, did you just say bias about the Lions? Did I catch that?
Well, I am, but it has a lot of young and older energy. It's very camp. It feels human to me. It feels like feels like a very human and emotional story wrapped up in this epic thriller. That's what drew me to the project. How
right, who's saying
how
all
real
this?
it felt.
Who's saying
these
this?
are people who these are the folks who actually worked on Daphne Keene, star of hit movies and shows like Logan and his Dark Materials. They were talking about people who had a lot to do with the creation of
exactly. And that's
Acolyte.
my point. Yeah, that's my point. It's sort of like, I mean, on one hand, because how many times have we heard, oh, it feels like the original trilogy, or, it's no different than when bands are always talking about their latest album. It's the best album we've ever recorded. Just once, I would love for a band to go, well, it wasn't quite as good as the last one, but it kind of fits in the first and second. I mean, nobody is going to be that honest. They're all going to toe the company line. They're all going to say it's the most amazing project ever. I mean, sure, some of this stuff is encouraging that they're actually bringing this up. So there is a little bit of validity to it, I think, a little credibility that they're bringing up things like, okay, it's very martial arts heavy and it's a little bit grittier. And, I mean, they're bringing up some talking points that maybe they weren't prodded to do. So it does add a little bit of weight, right? But at the same time, how many times have we read some press release of, somebody talking about these things, and then you watch it and you're like, I don't see any of what these people were talking about.
Right. Just to reiterate, the last thing it says, the Acolyte will be Star Wars' first live action foray into the High Republic era, which is currently being explored in Star Wars books and comics and takes place centuries before The Phantom Menace, which is episode 1. The narrative centers primarily on its female villains and focuses on reversing the roles of the Jedi and the Sith, with the Jedi as the bad guy. It also has been reported that the Acolyte has spent nearly 50 million on pre-production, setting it up to possibly be one of the most Star Wars streaming series yet.
Well, the other thing that I'm wondering too, you remember that whole it was some interview or something somebody brought up where they were talking about how the Acolyte was actually going to be a little bit of an Indiana Jones kind of vibe.
Yeah.
You don't really hear anybody talking about that anymore.
Well, that might be the story premise of it, but I think what they're trying to do is, and it could be to David's point, and I agree with him in a lot of different areas where some of the things he felt like it needs to have that gritty edge to it. The return of the masculine vibes needs to
Yeah, I don't think
be in
that's
Star
happening.
Wars. Yeah.
It's not happening, at least not with this show. The
Yeah, not
Force
with this-
is
not with this
female, as
show.
Kathleen Kennedy says, and it's in
Right.
full swing on this show. This is another female-centric show. But that said, though, it could be cool.
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing that I find funny, too. When I first heard that whole, it's going to have like this Indiana Jones vibe and they're going to be looking for stuff, my immediate thought went, you basically have the character of Dr. Aphra.
Mm-hmm.
Now, Dr. Aphra is a female character, and she's amazing. She's
Yeah.
actually one of my
Yeah.
favorite Star Wars characters of all time, and she's a relatively recent addition to the Star Wars universe. And she's essentially the Indiana Jones of the Star Wars universe. But she's a really cool character, and I think that she would translate very well in either television or film. Now, unfortunately, she comes sometime later because a lot of people are like, ooh, I wonder if Dr. Aphra is going to be in this. Not unless they retcon the character, because she's a little bit more like during the original trilogy. She kind of sits in that time period pretty nicely. Peter Griffin chats in. He says, Andor got Bix right. I'll give them that. Yeah, well, again, that's another female character that they did that I think was a nice balance. When they're not trying to make female characters quasi-male characters and allowing
Yeah.
them to be females and just,
Showcase their strength as women
yeah,
and not try to showcase your strength as a woman trying to portray
a guy.
a man, basically. Yeah.
And I mean, I think that that's something that they did absolutely correctly with Bix. She
As
kind
well
of,
as Deidre.
yep.
Even
Yeah.
on the flip side of that, like Deidre, they did. I loved her character.
Oh yeah, her character was
Loved it.
incredible. Yeah, and I'm hoping
Especially
we
her
see
dealing
more
with
of
Cyril
her.
too.
Yeah. I mean,
I like to
really,
call him
there's a
Cyril.
lot of the ancillary characters in Andor that I actually found more interesting than a lot of the main characters. Actually, Cyril and Deidre were two. Bix was somebody that was basically like a supporting character. I am curious on how they're going to bring in, because K2SO's coming in. It's going to feel like season 2. Here's the thing about season 2 of Andor, and this directly relates to the Acolyte as well, and that is season 2 of Andor is actually going to stretch a longer period of time. There's going to be gaps in between episodes of time. It's going to be very much like House of the Dragon that way, actually. For those of you guys who have seen the Game of Thrones prequel, House of the Dragon, you never really know. Like, some episodes might only have a couple of weeks or whatever in between episodes, and then another episode might have a couple of months between them, or years even, multiple years. And that's sort of what Andor is going to do. Andor is going to have maybe some episodes where it might be a week or two, and then other ones where it might be like a year or something. But it's also going to bring in some of the classic characters that we know, like K2SO and things like that, and feel a little bit more like Rogue One and less like season 1. That's what I've been hearing. Obviously we'll have to see. And with the Acolyte, I think it could actually benefit from the same thing. Instead of saying, okay, the entire season takes place between this year and this year. Maybe have, a couple of weeks between episode 1 and 2 and a couple of months between 2 and 3 and so on.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really just anxious to see what they do as far as the next steps of the Acolyte. I can't wait to see like a full trailer of it. I can't wait to see what comes of Andor. I mean, I know we have the whole writer strike going on right now, so that's kind of put a damper on a lot of different things production wise.
Now, it
So
hasn't
hopefully that could
affected
be.
the Acolyte made it through though, right? Was that completed? Like, was principal photography and all that completed? I mean, it's obviously been written, because I don't even remember, because I know they had the writer strike and they had the Screen Actors Guild was striking. I don't know if any of those. I mean, I heard that Johnny Depp was back at work or something, so I think the SAG basically might be back, but the writers are still out. I don't know. I've been keeping a little bit of track of that, but not too heavily. But I'm just wondering if the Acolyte, has made it. I mean, they had a trailer, so it makes me think that there's been some. I mean, I would think at least principal photography has been completed. And the other question that I have: when's it supposed to premiere? Anybody remember?
So from what I'm reading now, it says the series was announced in 2020, began production in 2022 in
Okay.
October. Things wrapped up early in June of 23. And so it's safe to assume that the post-production stage will take about a year. So the Acolyte will be officially released in the second or third quarter of 24.
Wow, so we're still a ways away. In fact, we might be seeing the Acolyte around the time that we see Andor season 2. I'm sure toward the end. So we're in September right now. I'm sure like around December.
To answer our question, it's 8 episodes.
Oh, it is 8 episodes?
Mhm.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Let me get to this here. Bruce says, are the two sisters in the Acolyte going to be twins? Or is she mad they took one away from them? I don't actually know. And I'm really curious. I'm curious on a lot of character things, right? Because we know that this thing is going to be taking place toward the end of the High Republic. I wonder, are we going to see some High Republic characters in this? Some of the ones that we've seen in the novels, for instance. I'm just really curious on, where all that's going to land. I mean, again, if you were at Star Wars Celebration, you saw like a little teaser trailer or some behind the scenes or something that did end up leaking, which I think we even featured on the show at that time. I think we did show some clips from it and reacted to it. But, it's still a little early to tell, I think, honestly, getting a feel for it. I'm cautiously optimistic about what this is going to be like. I want to believe it's going to be super amazing. It sounds like it will be, but, I was absolutely sure I would have laid money down that Ahsoka was going to be incredible. It's good, but it has some problems. And so
it still has some time to right its wrong, so to speak, or at least kind of turn the tide in a different direction, but it's got to be now.
Yeah, it's got to be now. And you can't pull that in the last 2 episodes thing either.
Yeah, because if it's it's like you save it for the last 2 episodes, it's still a failed show, in my opinion.
Right, exactly. Bruce says, are they both force sensitive? I wonder what makes the one turn. Yeah, I'm not really... it's funny because they've released a little bit of information, but not a whole lot. I mean, this is one of those situations where it's somewhat deceptive because they've given you enough that you feel like you actually have more than you really do. Because they did the whole like character thing a little bit. They didn't do it quite as in depth as when they release the Obi-Wan characters and some of the other stuff they've done in the past. And we're still far enough away from the show. I think that, I mean, if
Yeah,
we're talking second or third quarter of 24, there's a lot that's going to be coming out information wise, I think.
yeah. Acolyte is 2024, Andor season 2 is August of 24. Bad Batch season 3 to be determined. Mandalorian
Wow, you know
season
what?
4.
I never finished watching like the last 4 episodes or whatever it was of season 2. I got to do that. And really, I mean, honestly, we haven't, because we started out reviewing season 2 of the Bad Batch, and we just sort of stopped because these other shows got in the way, and we never returned to it. So maybe, I don't think we're gonna like spend any live shows on it, but maybe we'll do, some pre-records or something and just put them out there, like as one chunk that everybody can go to if they're interested. But yeah, I mean, I think that we're going to probably get more reveals as time goes on as far as the motivation between the characters and what characters. Because like I said, I mean, are we going to get, there's that one, I mean, look, in this shot here, you see there's, Leslie Headland went on with somebody dressed as the Wookiee Jedi, I mean, there's a few of them, but it's kind of like, well, is that character going to be in this? I mean, you don't know. And I wonder how many people, because I've read a few, like I read a ton of comics on the High Republic. I read a couple of the novels. There's a bunch of them that came out, and I think they're in like phase 3 or something. And I just started phase 2. And there's definitely, they jump around quite a bit, right? They tell, like there's this whole host of characters that they have for the High Republic. And then each of the novels or comic series will focus on a certain amount of them, like say 4 of them or something. And so you're getting you're getting the bigger picture by reading all of this stuff, but it's not like a linear storytelling thing. And so I wonder how the Acolyte's going to handle that. Are we going to see some of these High Republic characters moving in and out? Are we going to see some of the, like what were some of those, High Republic, like those man-eating plants.
Drangir?
Yeah, the Drangir. Yeah, it's like, are we going to see them pop up? It's going to be really interesting to see, because again, like you said, right, the Acolyte is going to spin it to where it's going to be Sith-centric, so the Jedi are going to seem like the bad guys in this. And so how are they going to frame that? There's just so many different questions that, unfortunately, we can speculate all day here, but we're not going to get the answers anytime soon. However, we will be periodically focusing on the Acolyte as stuff comes up. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we decided to do it tonight, actually, because we thought that this was a big enough deal that, hey, sure, we know this show's like a year away, but this is a significant enough development that I think it warranted some good discussion. And we've had some great discussion with you guys tonight on this, along with, other stuff. All right, so any last thoughts on this this whole Acolyte thing?
No, man, I think, like always, it just remains to be seen. I think, from what it sounds good, but ultimately what's gonna boil down to is the execution. On paper it sounds amazing. It sounds something we've always wanted to see, but once again, it's like, I put my order in, but can you deliver it? So,
are you
we shall
botch
see.
up my order like some sort of bizarro Star Wars drive-through? Exactly.
Exactly.
Because that's the thing. Like, I got the bag, and it looks like my order's right upon first glance. Oh, yeah,
Smells
okay,
good.
it's cool. It's not till I get home and unpack it that I realize that, you forgot my fries, or I ordered a chicken sandwich and you gave me fish, or, whatever, right? That's what Star
Right.
Wars has been doing to us. That's a good analogy, actually. I'm starting to get, like, visions of Joe Pesci's "They Screw You at the Drive-Thru" rant from Lethal Weapon.
Oh.
Technically Lethal Weapon 2. Okay, so here's a couple of chats. Dragonfly Mass is a young Yoda.
Possibly.
I mean, it's possible, right? He's around. I mean, he's
Definitely.
easily around. He's like 600 years old, roughly 600 and something years old, probably in that neighborhood around this time period. So younger. I mean, that's the thing. Okay, so here comes David. David, of course, is David. He says, "Are y'all gonna finally admit you're wrong about Ahsoka after Episode 5 sucks too?" Okay, first of all, Episode 4, if you remember correctly, we praised. Sure, we said there was some problems, but we said that they're trying to fix it. Now, maybe I'm just being sucked into the whole moment or whatever, but I happen to think, I'm curious on what you think, because it's tomorrow. I think Episode 5 may actually be a turning point. I'm just going to put this out there now, because you can come at me on Friday when we review it, but I'm just going to say, for the record...
Oh, he definitely will.
I know. Well, we count on that, right? I mean, that's where a lot of the cool discussion comes from. It's probably entertaining for people to watch. But I'm just gonna put that out there now and say, I think Episode 5 is gonna be really good. Now, do I necessarily think that a lot of the problems that have been plaguing the show are gonna magically go away? No, I don't. But I think what's gonna happen is a lot of those issues are going to start to be minimized a little bit, and the plot, the direction, all this stuff is going to, to outweigh it. Now, oh, David. Come on, pop in there. Here we go. Okay. So David says, "I got 3 coffees if it's good. Spoiler, I'm not worried." Now, here's my problem with that statement. So, of course, we appreciate that. And look, you guys can always go to buymeacoffee.com/headtoheadsw. In fact, I'll even be cool. I'll put this, because you could do like a one-time donation, or you could do any of these 3 memberships. And that's what David's talking about when he's saying he'll buy us coffees. All right? But here's the thing. And I think that this is an important distinction. That is so subjective, right? Like, I mean, because again, we loved Andor and you didn't. So, I mean, how are we... You can just say it's bad, even if it's good. But I will say that David did buy us coffees in similar situations, so we'll see. But I will say this. I think the fact they're releasing this theatrically means that something big's going to happen. I think we're going to see Thrawn. I think that maybe Anakin, because, he appeared in the last episode. I think we might be seeing a little bit more of that. I think that there's just going to be some big, weighty stuff happening in this episode, and that's why they're choosing this one to release theatrically. So I don't think they're going to do that on something that sucks. But then people could argue that they did release The Last Jedi theatrically. All apologies to Ronaldo, because we know that's like his favorite Star Wars film, actually. But, that's another one. I mean, we generally like The Last Jedi, but, there were some problems. And if you guys want to see what those are, go to our What is Star Wars series. We review every film, like all 9 of the franchise films plus the standalones. And, I think that that's pretty much the way that's going. All right, so now Ted Adam Green has something for us. He says, "Beauty or entertaining is in the eye of the beholder. As a buddy of mine often says, that's why Baskin-Robbins makes more than one flavor." Oh, that's good. That's good. I like that. And yeah, I mean, and a lot of times, just, to put this out there, because I just feel compelled to do so. Usually when we talk about some things that are good and bad, we will talk about it in the objective and then subjective sense, right? Like, we might say, okay, this is good or bad, but it might not land with everybody, Because, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that you can point to objectively, more like scientifically. And it does take a special kind of a talent to do this, because it's really difficult sometimes to separate what you like versus and don't like versus what's good or bad. You know, I give this thing all the time where I'll judge certain music. I'll say, okay, you know, this is actually a good song, but I can't stand it. And that sounds very counterintuitive. But, you know, I'm objectively looking at, you know, the composition, the arrangement, the musicianship. Are they actually trying to achieve the goal that they're trying to achieve? And if, you know, if all those things are in place, okay, objectively it's a good song, but it doesn't do anything for me. So I don't like it.
Right.
And then, of course, there's objectively terrible songs that you just can't stop singing because you're just so catchy and you just really enjoy it for whatever reason. Same thing with those guilty pleasure movies, right? There's all those like B-type movies that we just love, even though we know they're terrible. You know, I mean, it's
Sharknado.
yeah, exactly. You know, but you just love it because, you know, it's kind of like junk food. It's basically
it's
yes.
Yeah, exactly. Great analogy. Junk food.
Cinematic junk food, right? I mean, that's basically what it comes down to. And so what we tried to do with this show in discussing it with everybody, because it's also fun to get all the different viewpoints that everybody has. But we can look at something objectively and go, okay, this was actually a good episode, but we just hate it, right? All right, so now David says, we'll know who won. Believe me, it'll be obvious. It's been obvious. But you all have a false hope that it'll get better. Well, maybe not. This is starting to feel like Andor all over again. I will say that.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
He has a problem with things like Andor, Ahsoka, Acolyte.
Acolyte, yeah. Yeah, we have to... It's a good point. We have to get out of the A's, right? I mean, that might be the issue. I don't know. All right. But again, you know, we'll be back with you guys Friday at some point. We're going to shoot for 10, might be 11, so, you know, just hang out. It's Friday. Most of you guys probably don't have to work, at least I hope not. And, you know, we'll probably go from there. We'll be reviewing episode 5, and we'll actually get to know, is David right? Is it going to be terrible? Or is it going to be cool? And hey, maybe we'll even try to look up some theatrical numbers and find out, you know, where it is. Because that was a good point. I don't know if Lucasfilm is actually going to put those out or not. You know, they might just go, look, we're quietly doing this. This is for the hardcore fans. But I do find that it's a really weird decision for them to go and do that. Did you ever find out how many screens it was playing in, though? Like how many they're releasing it to? Yeah, try to look that up. Try to look it up. How many screens are is this thing even playing on? Dragonfly says Box Office Mojo may be the best bet. Yeah, you mean to get the results? That's a good point. Yeah, they're actually really good at posting that kind of thing. So I'm really curious about that too. Anything? Producing on the fly, everybody. This is what it looks like.
Yeah. Crap.
Well, I mean, I know a lot of it too is they try to like punch you, you know, punch in your zip code or do something like that. But I'm really curious because the reason why I bring this up is because if it's only a few screens across the country, I don't necessarily think that. I mean, Dragonfly has a point, right? Box Office Mojo may actually post the results no matter if it was on 10 screens, they would do it. But if it's going to be one of those things to where it's a wide theatrical release, which apparently it isn't, because you're saying we have to drive to Utah to actually go check it out. I'm wondering where, you know, if it's going to be like in Chicago, Pennsylvania, because it does remind me of when we tried to drive like somewhere in northern Michigan to see Sharknado. I remember that. And then we got the wrong day because it was like midnight the next day or something. That was on the theater, by the way. That wasn't us. We had it right. They don't know how to tell time. As everybody waits with bated breath.
So the 10 cities this special Ahsoka screening is available in Boston, Chicago, Dallas, Los Angeles, Orlando, Philadelphia, Seattle, San Francisco, and DC.
So Chicago is the closest place.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah, well, that would be out.
It's 10 cities, but they don't give the amount of screens.
Well, I mean, you got to assume it's probably 1%. I mean, it was funny because I was actually joking about that, but while it's conceivable they could do like 2 screens per city or something like that, I don't know. That's really strange, though. It's too bad. I wonder why they chose those particular ones too, but oh well. Either way, I'm not going to be getting out of work till tomorrow till like 8:30 at night, so it's probably out for me to see any of the showings because I would actually drive to Chicago to do it. I mean, hey, it's kind of a fun, I love to do the whole drive thing, and then you're checking something out, and then of course you're coming right back, but that would be cool. So all right, look for the Acolyte. Obviously, if anything else is released on it, we're going to be talking about it. Looks like we are at least going to get some really cool epic fight scenes. It's going to be a lot of lightsaber action. If you're into the whole militaristic part of it, the war, you're not going to get much out of this series. So, and David said, guys trip. That's right. Yeah, we could have even run a contest. It's too bad I actually had to work. We could have run a contest. Like, who wants to join us to see this thing? I still want to actually try to do. That's what's cool about the Discord is that we can use, we can do some watch parties and things like that. So I want to try to do that down the line. And one of the reasons why we even got the Discord, which by the way, join us on our Discord server. I've been communicating with a lot of you guys on it. I know, David, you finally watched our Sith Lord thing, which is a members only video. So glad you enjoyed that. But actually having people call into our show. I think it would be fun for instead of just you guys chatting, if you were to actually call into the show. I think that would actually be really cool to do. We're going to wrap this up with Dragonfly's comment, which I actually want to post. He says, what trailers would they play before the episode? Sneak peek of Andor Season 2? I mean... Right? I mean, I don't know.
I don't think there's even going to be a trailer. I think
there might not be because we've done this before where we actually saw, was it the Clone Wars that maybe it was or something? I don't know. There was something that we saw that was very similar. And yeah, they didn't do trailers. Sometimes what they'll do, they might have like an introduction with the direct, like Filoni might pop up and say, hey, thanks for, checking out, and maybe say a little blurb or something and enjoy, and then it just comes up. But it would be kind of cool, I have to admit. Even if the episode sucks, it would still be kind of cool to see this thing on the big screen. We haven't had a Star Wars film in a while now. So I mean, this is I'm starting to get a little bit of withdrawal from not having any of the films. And the next one's supposed to come out in what, like 20... Is it 25 or 27?
I think it's 26.
Oh, yeah, you might be right. They did. I think they actually did like 26 or something. So still, we're like a good 3 years away. I mean, it's going to be so weird to see a Star Wars movie again, honestly. So we'll have to see. But either way, again, don't forget to hit that like button if you enjoyed this video. Hit subscribe. Again, notification bell. It's more important now than ever since our Friday schedule is a little weird. If you guys are, watching this after the fact, leave a comment in the comment section. Let us know what you're thinking. Just because you're not on live doesn't mean you can't join the discussion. As everybody can attest, I do answer all the comments that come through. So we can keep it going. We can keep it going on the Discord. So that can be fun. And so, yeah, Friday we'll review episode 5 of Ahsoka. Maybe we'll try to dig up some theatrical numbers and find out how many people actually went and saw this thing in the theater and, talk about that. And I'm sure there's a bunch of stuff that we can talk about with this episode. And, of course, whether or not David's going to be buying us coffees or not. That's a very important thing. All right, so with that, I'm Eric Vansel.
I'm Daryl Sanders.
May the Force be with you.
Always.
Head to Head, a Star Wars podcast. Be sure to follow us on Twitter @HeadToHeadSW. Submit your questions for our next show. Visit our official website at headtoheadswpodcast.com. Until next time, may the Force be with you, always.